All right, you all know the drill by now. Another day, another set of blowouts to talk about. Let's recap day 6 of women's college basketball.
Quita Loves Sports. It is in the name.
What is up, awesome people of the internet? 2 questions for you. How many games have you seen so far this season for women's college basketball? And 2, what do you think about it? How many of those games are blowouts? That's my question. How many games have you watched? How many of those are blowouts? And for me, I've watched a lot of games. I don't even remember how many games I've seen so far. In the 6 days of women's college basketball, I've seen a lot of games. And well over 60% of those games are blowouts. Crazy. Every year at the beginning of the season, we have non-conference games, right? It's every year. And for many of the Power 4 schools in the country, it means facing schools that we've never heard of. Schools like Northwestern State, schools like Cal Poly, Townsend, Mercyhurst, and others, which results in blowouts. Several blowouts. And if you all are anything like me, you are not interested in blowouts at all. Now, before we talk about why we have the games in the first place, why we have those blowout games in the first place, let's take a look at yesterday's top 25 games, and there were 3 of them. So we saw number 3, USC, have their home opener against Cal Poly. Now, guys, I watched this game on Big Ten Plus, and it was ridiculous with a final score of 90 points for USC, 35 points for Cal Poly. And guys, it would have been a whole lot worse because in the first quarter alone, it was 40-6. Then USC started to get a whole lot less disciplined in the remaining quarters. That added with giving the bench significant minutes, left USC just shy of the century mark. Now, for the players, Juju Watkins led the way with 16 points in a very inefficient manner, I may add. 6 rebounds and 4 blocks. We did see some good minutes from the freshies and Kylie Heckel and Kennedy Smith, who added in 16 points and 10 points respectively. Heckel is really good. But again, we haven't seen USC play like tough, real tough competition just yet. So yeah, jury's still out. But I'm really interested to see how the freshies sort of continue on. I know it's more than just those 2, but those 2 are like my focuses when it comes to USC. I think they're the best 2 freshmen. And everything else in this game was sort of blah. It was like, whatever. I was watching it, but I was like, man, not very interesting at all. Though shout out to the play-by-play people. They were trying to make it interesting. Like the guy especially, I thought he did a good job trying to make this a really interesting game. But the play on the court, it was you could tell USC was not giving it their best effort because they didn't have to. Next up, we had number 16 West Virginia. Actually, let me do that over again. We had number 16 West Virginia take down Niagra. They ended up passing the century mark with a final score of 110-41. Now, the whole thing was a turnover fest. Absolutely a turnover fest. Niagara turned the ball over the entire game, guys. 44 times. 44 turnovers in one game. And for the Mountaineers, they ate it up. We saw Jordan Harrison scoring 21 points. Sydney Shaw, 20 points. But shout out to senior Zaya Nugent for scoring 7 points and surpassing 1,000 points in her career. Cool milestone for her.
For big career accomplishment, Zaya Nugent scored her 1,000th.
When we talk about the games yesterday, the first 2 games I talked about, not very interesting, blowout games. But the third one was actually pretty interesting. featuring number 23 Nebraska, who barely defeated Southeastern Louisiana. The final score of that game was 78-68. Now, that game was much closer than the score actually says. The main separation really did happen in the fourth quarter of that game. Now, coming into the game, I really expected Nebraska to just dominate. I wasn't really even interested in this game, to be honest with you. I was like, oh, Nebraska's going to win, and that's about it. But it was not the case that they were going to win easily. Southeastern Louisiana started the game on the front foot, being aggressive, hitting their shots, and playing some really good defense. Also, because Nebraska missed free throw at the free throw at the free throw, and they kept turning over the ball, especially earlier in the game. Southeastern had a 6-point lead at halftime. The score at half was 37-31. And then Nebraska actually started to put their feet on the gas, led by sophomore Natalie Potts, who had 17 points in this game. She was able to help secure the win for the Cornhuskers. And I do have to say a huge shout out to Alexis Horn, who played her butt off for Southeastern, ultimately finishing the game with 24 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists. Guys, she was literally doing everything for her squad, but ultimately it was not enough to take down Nebraska. Though for Southeastern Louisiana, they need to put their head held high. They played a heck of a match and really should be proud of themselves for staying in the game as long as they did, and almost having a chance to win. Now that we talked about those games, let's get back to our original discussion. Why at the beginning of the season we see so many blowout games. Now, the reason why is because many Power 4 programs want to ease into the year. They pad their stats a little bit, pad their schedule a little bit with mostly easy games that serve as more of an elevated practice for players to work out the kinks, especially for newer players, whether they be transfers or freshies, to sort of work out the kinks, try to get used to the system of play before conference play actually starts. Because the conference play is the thing that really does matter for teams. And also it's used as a way to just sort of rack up stats for end of the season awards. So, that's a thing. Now, what's the incentive for smaller schools? So if you're like, okay, well, the bigger schools have an incentive because you want to win some easy games and also practice. What's in it for the smaller schools? Well, what's in it for the smaller schools is money. Well, of course. Of course it's money. Now, in football games, these games are known as paycheck games. Now, guys, I scoured the internet and tried to find a sufficient explainer on these sort of paycheck games, and here is a awesome explainer I saw from KCEN TV.
Lopsided scores early in the season that spark the debate online of whether it's a needed phenomenon. Guarantee games, also known as buy games or paycheck games, help college teams fill their schedules. The premise is simple. A bigger school invites a smaller school to play a game, and they get a check for their efforts.
When I was at Marshall, we tried to play one, every 3 or 4 years, just to go out and get a paycheck and help out the budget, especially in years that, we thought we were going to be a little lean.
Jeff O'Malley is the athletic director at Lamar University in Beaumont after a stint as Marshall's chief of staff. During the 2022 football season, his first in Beaumont, Lamar played 2 bye games against FBS foes, SMU and New Mexico State. There's more to those, though, than the checks.
I think it's always an advantage to play up a little bit and use it as a barometer to see where we are.
We requested the non-conference contracts for every Big 12 football game that involved at least one public school, which only eliminates Baylor at BYU and SMU at TCU. The checks range in price, with games against FCS foes like Lamar averaging just shy of $500,000, with the conference's schools doling out a combined $2.8 million in just 6 such games.
To put it into perspective, how much does that help the budget at a school like a Lamar, like a Stephen F. Austin, or even when you were at Marshall, some of these group of 5 schools are getting, 1.5, 1.7, 1.8 million.
Yeah. I almost feel like it had more of an impact for us at Marshall than it does on our budget here.
The price tag for FBS foes varies. We found 3 games in 2022 that did not include a payout. Of the ones with payouts, the smallest was $100,000. Just 3 games between a Big 12 team and another FBS opponent featured 7-figure checks, though, with Oklahoma paying UTEP $1.3 million and Kent State $1.5. Then Texas paid Louisiana Monroe $1.85 million. There is some back and forth on these, though, with O'Malley saying the biggest give and take usually comes on the buyout should one team cancel and leave the other scrambling to find a game. They all address things like tickets, sideline credentials, and Oklahoma State even worked in 120 hotel rooms for one night, up to $15,000 for its 2015 trip to Central Michigan, which O'Malley says is unique.
I haven't seen the hotel ones in a football contract. I know in basketball contracts or baseball or some of the other sports that's pretty that's commonplace.
Among the 6 FCS games we received contracts for, Baylor's 2022 opener against Albany featured the smallest payout at $400,000. And while that seems like a good payday, it doesn't go quite as far as you'd expect.
By the time you charter a plane and you travel and all that, it's really not. It is a net positive, but it's not transformational type money.
But football is not the only sport that offers smaller schools these paydays. Men's basketball and some women's basketball games feature sizable paychecks as well. When the money that comes into the athletic department is totaled, is when it makes a difference for the smaller schools that might not have the donor base of a Big 12 school.
Whether you're going to refresh a locker room or make a new entrance into a building, you can certainly do that with that kind of money.
Some, though, also give it, carrying President Reagan's idea of trickle-down economics into college sports.
You get a pay game, you go on the road, and then you use that, right? You use that to buy teams that are going to come in and play you.
However, with this round of realignment and the likely expansion of conference play in revenue sports like football and basketball, O'Malley is worried about the future of these games that departments like his rely on.
I think it's actually decreasing.
In conversations with coaches in the small college ranks, they told us that the smaller you go, the smaller those paychecks tend to get. And that in Division 2 and 3, you'll even see some basketball teams, for example, get their guarantee in the form of game count and game scheduling.
Now, some of the women's basketball programs do, as they said in the video, have paycheck games as well. Though I cannot find a list of all of the schools that specifically do paycheck games, I do, however, think it is safe to say that many of the top 25 teams do this. If not most Power 4 schools do this. Now, either they are providing financial incentive, like that means straight cash, to these schools, or they're providing some sort of like travel or hotel benefit, like, hey, if you come play us, we'll pay for your hotel while you're here. We'll pay for you to travel. We'll, give you a money for food or for your players or like whatever, or some sort of other benefit. And even in the video, as it said, just being able to just add another game on the schedule is also just an incentive as well, because teams have to fill out their schedule with games. And so if you're struggling to find games and you're a smaller school and a big school is like, you know what, we'll play you, you're gonna get destroyed, but we'll play you. That's another reason as well. Now, so this is sort of like a win-win for schools in some instances, though not always in all instances, but for fans, this isn't great. For fans like me and you who enjoy, as Kathy Engelbert loves to say, games of consequence, the first half of the season for a significant amount of these Power 4 teams are not games of consequence. They're games that you should probably avoid. They're games that are not very interesting. They're games where, yeah, sure, they're hitting the century mark and they're hitting some crazy stats. They got a crazy amount of steals, crazy amount of blocks, like stats up the wazoo. But the games itself are not really interesting because it's clear that they're destroying the other team. and it's clear that the other team just has no real shot to actually win this game. But that's what happens. That's what happens at the beginning part of the season. However, not all teams do this. And I do have to shout out one school that I think has done it well for the last several years when it comes to non-conference games, when it comes to like the opportunity that they have to create, to give themselves all these cupcake games, but instead they give us games of consequence, guys. And this is South Carolina. Now, I know some of y'all gonna be like, why you gotta praise South Carolina for this? Because I think South Carolina is doing this well. This year, South Carolina is only playing 5 of those sort of like paycheck, easy cupcake games, right? They're playing Coppin State, they're playing East Carolina, Purdue, Charleston, Southern, and Wofford. So, this list is kind of subjective, right? I consider these games pretty easy, blowout games, and games that are likely to be that sort of paycheck type of game, because for the most part, many of the games outside of the Power Four, minus those mid-major darlings, are considered, in my opinion, these types of paycheck games. It's fine to play an unranked team. I'd have zero problem with playing an unranked team that is not in the Power Four. Not a problem at all. But it's about how good and how competitive that team actually is. Like, for example, you may see a game against a unranked team that's fire, right? Princeton, for example, is a game that, if a Power Four school plays them, that's not a cupcake game. That's not a paycheck game, because Princeton's a good squad, even though they're not ranked. Harvard, same type of deal. You have teams that are not ranked that are really good that will give some work to the Power Four schools. So those are not paycheck games. The paycheck games are like these schools that you've never heard of, schools that get destroyed every single year when they play Power Four schools, but still do it because, they get some benefit out of it. Now, you all may point out that, hey, South Carolina's not the only team that does this. UConn also has a pretty tough non-conference schedule, and UConn does. They have, in my count, 4 of what I would consider those cupcake / paycheck games this season. But the huge difference between South Carolina and UConn is that South Carolina plays in the SEC, which is one of the toughest conferences in the country, if not the toughest conference. And UConn plays in the Big East. Big East does have some good teams, sure. But overall, the Big East isn't that competitive. It's top heavy. Yeah, like the schools at the top for the Big East are really good. But overall, it's not as competitive, and it's not as tough in terms of like really having to grind out some games, right? Compared to the SEC. So that's why I think UConn kind of has to play tougher non-conference games to ensure that they get a really good ranking, and also making sure they get a good placement for the NCAA tournament. So that's why I think that UConn plays those types of games, because I feel like they kind of have to in a way. Okay. That, and you compare UConn, you compare South Carolina to USC and Notre Dame, who, in my opinion, are playing 7 of those sort of very, very easy games. Then you have LSU, who are playing a whopping 12 of those games. So now, with that being said, my question to you all is, what do you think about these cupcake non-conference games, or these paycheck types of games? Do you all even watch these games? Or are you like, I know this is going to be a blowout. I know I'm not going to see competitive matches, so I'm going to watch football instead. I'm going to watch a TV show instead. I'm going to watch something else other than USC absolutely dominating against a school that I hear about once a year when USC plays them. You know what I'm saying? Like, what do y'all think? What do y'all watch? I think the reason why this is becoming such a glaring issue to me is because, unlike other years, I am watching so many games on ESPN Plus and Big Ten Plus, games that will never, ever make it on TV because they're straight up blowouts. And I've seen so many blowouts right now, and I feel like after 6 days of watching primarily blowouts, I feel a little bit burnt out of just, this is not interesting. But, guys, we do have a great slate of games today, so I'm excited about that. Hopefully, y'all are as well. We do have some games of consequence today, so I'm excited to watch some real competitive basketball. I hope y'all are as well. All right, with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you are new to the channel. Guys, also, if you are in the Chicagoland area, join me for the In Real Life Hangout happening next weekend as we watch Chicago State versus Arizona and DePaul versus Texas. Those 2 games are going to be awesome. Let's support local schools, okay? Let's come out and put some funds in Chicago State's and DePaul's pocket as we buy some tickets, buy some food while we're there, and support those programs. Now, if y'all are not in Chicago, well, we'll have another In Real Life Hangout sometime in the future. All right. Thank y'all so much. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, tell a neighbor, tell a friend, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Like seriously, let me know about what you think about these games. Are you even watching these games? Because for the most part, if you're just watching games on TV, you're not going to see these blowout games. Like, you're only really seeing these blowout games if you are watching on one of those subscription things. SEC Plus, ACC, what is it called? All Access or something like that. ESPN Plus, Big Ten Plus. Like, you're only seeing these blowout games on those. So if you're only watching TV, games that happen on TV, you're not seeing these games. So, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, if you've made it to the end, please put the squirrel emoji in the comments. And don't tell nobody why you put it in there. I just want to see who made it to the end. All right, guys. Till next time, guys. Bye.